came back and reported it as an unsafe experience, right? So this child who comes running to us saying that, oh no, but saying this to me and I don't like it, or is crying heavily, right? Is doing what? Is in the cycle. Is experiencing what? Concrete experience. When they are on the playground, okay, do you think this is the first time this would have happened to them? No, a play in itself is an act of active experimentation, because I have experienced something already and I am going back with some hypothesis, some strategies, some ways to handle it again and again and again, but something went out of whack. That moment, that concrete experience is what reaches your table many a times, right? Like, this is not done, right? Somebody did something to somebody else, right? At that point, right? What would you do? Right? You can call the other child, admonish that child. You can tell this child, chin up, right? This happens, right? The next step, based on what you do, can move them to reflective observation, okay? So at the place when this opportunity came to me, I was asking them, okay, tell me your story and tell me if the bystander or your friend told me the story, would it look the same? Okay, tell me the whole story. Right? And the child's stance changed. Like, no, he wouldn't call himself a bully. Right? That because I hurt him first. It came out in that reflective conversation. Till then, in that concrete experience, his story was of a victim. It moved to a reflective observation situation. And from there, he talked about what can he do differently next time something like this happens. That is abstract conceptualization, because it's not just about the scenario. And going back into the playground with something more solid to work with. Child could have done this on their own. They did it with my support. Great. Okay. But this doesn't stop there. Okay. What you can do next is something that we attempted is that think about all the different children in the playground who have different kinds of unsafe experiences. Can we run a survey? Can we do interviews, empathy interviews in school to find out all the unsafe experiences that children have? And that starts with abstract concept. And then they run different kinds of experimentation to figure out how is this unsafe experiences playing out? What can we do differently? Okay, then they go out into the concrete experience by empowering the students in different ways. So what they did was they said, we saw these unsafe experiences happening, we researched it, we have strategies, and we are building this into workshops, into comic strips, into songs, and we're going to go beyond our school community to nearby apartment complexes and try and educate children and parents about what to do in the playground bullying situation. So that's the concrete that they have now. You see the experiential learning cycle turned upside down from where it's, and the reflective observation is how effective were we in translating what we had learned to another person. Was their experience similar as ours? Did the learning happen? All right. With this one example, I want to invite my co-panelists to share more. We have a couple of more slides which talks about how and what does experiential learning look like. You will see that, there's a deep level of engagement in every single example that they're talking about, both in terms of physical, mental, emotional, social, that you will experience. And the learning and the experiences are generally very well designed. The reflections are a key part of their experience. Without that reflection, the most expensive of experiences can turn down. And that's not what we want for our children. So let me invite Kavita.
So I'm starting because what we do is we start with reflective observation. And why we start with reflective observation as opposed to a concrete experience is because we find that actually students are constantly on a daily basis having some sort of concrete experience like the playground piece, but they don't actually have time to sit and say, how do I reflect on all these different experiences I've had? How do I put them together? So the first thing that we do with students actually is get them to fill out a form. And we ask them all kinds of questions from what issues bother you? What do you talk to your friends about? What podcasts do you listen to, et cetera, et cetera. It's a fairly extensive form. We get them to just write. We said, don't worry about us judging you, grammatical errors, writing style, none of that. And we start to go in and actually start to put those experiences together. So, and we do that also because a lot of experiences, which are quite interesting, are sometimes deemed frivolous, especially at home. And those frivolous experiences may never get talked about in school. So I've had parents come to me saying, my kid is only interested in lipstick. But when we looked at the form, it was lipstick. But then we asked them about what about lipstick they found interesting. It was the product design and the packaging, right? For another kid, it might be something completely different. If they're interested in the environment, they're interested potentially in engineering, suddenly this is a big issue and they can do something really fascinating with it. And this is a potentially a very exciting career, right? So we take all of that and so the first set of reflection that they're doing is them answering the question. The second set of reflection that we do with them is we come up with all these kinds of ideas, right? How do you bring all these different experiences and things that you've had together? How could they make interesting projects? And then they're now they've got a whole bunch of stimuli to respond to and have another set of reflection. So, and we try to create a whole set of quite diverse experiences and project ideas. And we find, interestingly, sometimes the things that we think the student is going to love is actually not what they come and what we're really interested in. It might be the sort of the last idea which we sort of put in the test, and actually that's what they find the most interesting. So they get another chance to reflect. They also are getting an opportunity without having to go and have all these experiences to actually expand their awareness of how they could put all of this together, right? So I'll give you two quick examples. One was a student who came to us. He was actually quite young because we start young. We have a Future Achievers program that starts from grade 6. One of the things that he talked about was being very interested in science experiments and how in a school, he was at a top school in New Delhi. They had a great science lab, but what he loved doing was sort of beyond that. And he would go and find these experiments and order them, etc. And here is, we thought he'd be really excited by these really cool experiments that we came up with. What he ended up being really interested in, well, a question that we asked him: if you think you don't have enough access to the ability to do these advanced science experiments, what do you think happens in low-income schools? And he got hooked onto that. He was like, wow, if I can't get it, what's happening elsewhere? And that drove him. So we started small because he was in grade 7. We started with him doing something he created this small little science experiment kind of a kit. We ended up calling it a lab in a bag. It started off in a small community space, which was for low-income people in his community. It went on to becoming something that they implemented in the government schools in his area. By grade 10, the district educational magistrate had heard doing. By grade 12, he had trained teachers and impacted 50,000 students. And before it became scalable, became of the scale, we actually implemented a pre-post study so he could actually create research out of it. And what he discovered as a result of this is his interest in entrepreneurship, right? And that's what became interesting. Now, the second example to show you how we do continue the self-reflection throughout the process. So this was a student who came to us, and what came through very clearly was that she had deep anxiety. It was from childhood. It was something that was happening because of what was happening in the home. And it had been dismissed when she was young, right? So she'd been told she was basically an annoyance, right? Her anxiety was irritating her parents. So this was something very deep deeply. And it had now turned in grade 10 to academic anxiety, right? Because you're heading towards your class 10 board exams. So I believe strongly in post-traumatic growth. And I thought it would be interesting to see if she wanted to face her anxiety and do something about it. So one of the ideas we presented to her was this idea of saying, let's do some research on academic anxiety. It's been researched extensively in the US, but there's only been one study done in India, which has been done by Mindz, which is a very reputed mental health institute. And she got very excited about that. The excitement was saying, I could add something. I could take something that is scary to me and maybe help other people. And I do something that is intellectually sort of advanced and all this kind of thing. So it got her really excited. We did a survey. And then she said, then we started reflecting on the process. What did she enjoy? What did she not enjoy? And she talked about how she really wanted to go and impact people. But we also talked, now she's a girl with a lot of anxiety. So we didn't do the reflective observation part just from this the perspective of what she liked and what she didn't, but also why was this important to her? What was she maybe nervous and scared about? So we create a project template. And one part is why does this matter to you? And one of the things she told us later is every time I hit, because, we work with our students for 3-4 years on these projects. Every time I hit a roadblock, I would go back to why am I doing it? And that drove her passion. The second thing that we do is we say, what does success act? And it's not just the quantitative factors. I publish some great research, I get into a great college, but it's also about what impact am I having? Am I changing a student's life? Am I changing the way the teacher teaches in the classroom? What impact am I having? Am I adding to academic knowledge? Am I changing how India thinks about academic anxiety, etc.? As well as we ask them to reflect on what kind of roadblocks will you hit? And when you hit them, what will you do? So we're getting them to think critically about a number of things, including collaboration. So critically about problems that you will face and how can you potentially collaborate. So through the whole process, we're also teaching 21st century skills. So anyway, so now I want to take something in. She created a SEL curriculum called Just 5 Minute, which basically means just 5 minutes, because schools, especially even more so in low-income schools, don't have that much time, and convinced a bunch of NGOs, including, I think it was Teach for Pune, Teach for Bombay, Teach for Delhi, maybe, and got some international NGOs also excited about it, got that going, convinced after that, and it took a long time to convince this person, a project director at Ames, who was working on a resilience workbook, to take her on as an intern, and she interned with him for 6 months. COVID was there around that time. And so we looked at how was COVID impacting anxiety. And because of all of this, continuing to do the reflection, she ended up actually at college realizing that she wanted to look at an area that she discovered when she was looking at this whole COVID research paper, which was about looking at how anxiety affects cognition, right? And how that impacts early childhood specifically. So the point I'm trying to make is that the reflective observation needs to actually continue through the process, but not just on what am I enjoying and what am I doing, but on impact, why are you doing it, as well as what roadblocks will be actually hit, because it then starts to actually have a much, much bigger impact in shaping who you are. Handing over to Khushi, whose birthday it is today.
Hi, everyone. So I'm from Lumiere Education, where we provide one-on-one research opportunities for high school students, where high school students get a chance to work with mentors who are coming from top universities globally. But today I'm not talking too much about the program, but really talking about how students are using research as a way to engage in experiential learning, and how they're joining in at different stages of the cycle to be able to complete the cycle at some point, not necessarily in the program, but even once they go out of the research program. So how a program works is that students usually come in with either a field that they're interested in or a topic that they're interested in. And thereafter, the students will go ahead and work with a mentor to understand what are the different areas of research that they could possibly do within that field, or if they have a topic in mind, how do they break that down? And so usually they're starting with abstract conceptualization, because they're coming in with just an idea that they have, and then the mentor is helping them break that down to solidify that into a research question. They come up with a hypothesis, and that's where active experimentation kicks in. Students are then working, doing different from lots of literature reviews, doing a lot of data analysis, doing experiments to be able to try to prove their hypothesis or try to figure out whether their hypothesis is true or not. And thereafter, once they're able to come to a conclusion, that's where the concrete experience is going to kick in, because we have students taking that forward in different ways, whether that's getting research published, whether that is getting other opportunities. And then finally, when the reflective observation comes in, it's primarily students deciding to study a field because of the research that they did. So I'll just share 2 examples students that we had. So we had one student from Mumbai who is currently at Northwestern, and he was always curious about how physics like tied into things he saw in his daily life. So he was playing the electric circuit kit at the age of 4, started thinking about fluid dynamics and how the designs of how juice bottles are designed, came in being like wants to study or wants to learn more about physics. Worked with the mentor to come up with the topic on particle. So started narrowing this broad spectrum of physics into particle physics. During his time in the program, he went ahead and did a measurement in particle physics that the mentor said that it's something that no one can do in one single summer project because undergraduates, PhD students usually do it over 1 to 2 years. So just because of that interest, he was able to read a lot of literature, do a lot of analytics, come up with this particle physics measurement. Thereafter, because of the work that he did, he got even more interested with this field and got offered a position by his mentor at the Quark Research Group in Purdue. So that's where the concrete experience came. So whatever research that he did, he was able to take that forward and contribute as an independent researcher. And finally, now he's studying at Northwestern, he's studying physics there, and that's where the reflective observation came, that's what he's actually interested in. We had another student from Monaco who came to us wanting to do some research in cancer because of just family history of cancer. She went ahead a project on how cancer mRNA vaccines can be used to treat breast. Again, did not know what exactly she wanted to focus on within cancer. The mentor helped her do that, went ahead, got her research published in the International Journal of High School Research. Thereafter, to get the concrete experience, she went and got an internship at Harvard Medical School during her next summer, and then ended up going and studying at Harvard University. So this is just to show how students can use research in different ways to be able to get that experiential learning and hopefully complete the cycle.
Wonderful examples. Good afternoon. My name is Parth, and they talked about following this cycle at an individual level when you are interested in something. I'm going to talk more about a university. So I work in Ahmedabad University, and we've developed this very interesting experiential learning pedagogy, which actually helps students engage with whatever they're studying, and it gives them a lot of opportunities. So we are an interdisciplinary university. So I'm going to talk about a program called the Foundation Program, where this is an award-winning program and has recently won 2 awards, one for Association to Advance Collegiate Business in the US, and the Time Asia Award, because this is really challenging how young people think about applying what they've learned to real problems. Something that was there on that slide earlier. So how did we actually set this up? So the foundation program, when we were sort of trying to design this idea, our educators, we all came together and we said, what are the few things that we think all young people should know, regardless of the domain that they're studying? And we said, and of course, there are many ideas that had come, but we agreed on 6 things that we thought all people should know. So 2 of them are skills. One is data science and one is communication. This is something today we believe every young person should know. 2 were about perspectives, which is behavior and constitution and civilization. And 2 were about innovation in the 21st century, which is really about biology in life and materials. These are the 2 things, these experts felt are going to be the things that are going to see innovation for the next 50 years. So how do we actually help young people know about these 6 things, but also not sort of teach them in a way which makes it boring. They have to be able to engage with those topics and be able to use them in real life issues. So we started thinking, how do we do this? So we said, one, we realized that it must be interdisciplinary, and therefore we asked different faculty members to come together to teach this. So we created 4 foundation studios. And these 4 foundation studios, we wanted to do it in a way where each foundation studio actually brought out the learning for all the 6 domains. So the way we did it was we took complex problems that human beings face and we put them as studios. So the 4 ones were environment and climate change, which, as you know, is one of the most complex problems we are facing in society. The second was democracy and justice. The third was neighborhoods, which is really about urbanization, because all victims and participants in this crazy urbanization that we see all. And the fourth is water. Again, a resource where we realize there's a very big global problem that we're having. And we said, now, all students at Ahmedabad University, as soon as they join, they go through all of these 4 studios. And the way the studios work is, they come in the morning. So each studio runs for 1 month, and they do only that at that time. So the way it works is, in the morning, they come and get some perspective, right? And after the perspective, then they actually, in the afternoon, they do activities. They go and experiment. They go and actually find out things. Then they write reports. And then they come back to to ponder about what they've learned. So that's the cycle, but I'll explain it with an. So in the water studio, for example, what students do is they find out a little bit about potability of water, supply of water, but very briefly. This is just day 1. You get to know a little bit, and then they may put into groups, and each of them has to go to all 24 wards of Ahmedabad, right? So this begin by first going out into the city. They learn a little bit about data sampling, and then they say, okay, you have to collect samples of water from each community that you go to. Then they come back to the biology and the chemistry lab. And there we used to get very interesting examples with students from arts and management saying, why do we have to go to biology and chemistry lab? And engineers and the science students saying, why do we have to go to community and collect water? Okay, but experience for them. So they would come back and test the water for pH levels, TDS, potability, and then they would say, okay, they would come back to the classroom and say, okay, where did we get good water? Did we get it in a posh neighborhood, or did we get it in a slum? They would ask questions like, whose responsibility is to supply water? Is it the responsibility of the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, the government? Who plays a role in that? They would also ask questions whose responsibility is to collect the water. And often that would become a gender issue. Why? Because most places they would see that this is the woman who's to collect the water. The men don't do that job. So, through this whole process, they would actually learn about gender. They would learn about biology, chemistry. They would learn about constitution and civilization. They'd learn about behavior, because they would realize that there are water fights happening, right? So this is the way we sort of constructed this interesting curriculum. And all students have to go through it in the year 1 or do all 4 of these. Now, what we realized is that when students were doing this, they were breaking their own restrictions of saying, oh, I have studied so-and-so subject. Now they're saying, okay, this subject is actually applicable somewhere, right? And then when they would study other subjects at the university, we saw that they were really being able to connect amazing things. And I'll give you just one example. There are many, but I was going through some of them, and I said I have to give one good example. So there's this girl called Haley Desai, who recently finished her integrated Master of Science in Life Sciences. I want to, where do you think she might be working now? It's a very interesting question. I'm just generally putting it out. But where do you think she's working? If she's done an integrated Master of Science, probably a life sciences company. Okay, she's actually working for Google. Okay, and how did she get this job? It's very interesting. I was also very interested to. So she was a student of the year in 2021. And she works for Google as a community manager who works with developers on creating solutions which help communities. So technological solutions and how it does it help communities. Now, how did she actually figure this out? So while she was at the university, she discovered that she had a passion for technology, for social impact, for community management, and women empowerment. And she, she did a series of community projects. So so because we have something called volunteerism, so each student has to do 30 hours of volunteerism. So when she started doing these community projects, she got very interested and she did a dissertation actually on air quality. And when she was doing her dissertation on air quality, she got interested in coding and environmental science because she realized that you cannot do air quality experiments without understanding coding and environmental science. So she said, okay, I want to learn those. And that's how she started actually doing various other things. She also set up the Women Empowerment Forum at the university. And this was part of the UGC gender grant. There was a gender champions grant, which they got and set up a club. And she started putting all of these things together and did one Google course called I'm Remarkable for women and other communities who wanted to sort of talk about their self-promotion. And through this, she actually landed a job at Google. Now, this is a very unusual journey. And this is possible only because of constant ability to look at disciplines and say, okay, where are the applications? And not sort of live in that world where, one discipline and you say, okay, I'm only studying the content in this. So I think the ability to do this and some of the examples that they also shared, things are connected and complex problems need complex solutions. And they need solutions that come from different domains. So that's the idea, that we sort of are promoting. But we also believe that this is something that schools need to do. Because though we're doing it at the university, if you do it at the school, and that's where, I met Sreeja and it was like so exciting because they were doing it in the school. So that's our pitch to schools also that, if you do it in your school, students will find meaning within what they're doing and they'll be able to find. And I understand, there's always the pressure of curriculum and all these things. But that's how we built some space for this too. Thank you.
Thank you, Parth. That was a good segue. All right. So I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Sreeja Iyer. I'm the founder of Sparkling Minds Global School located in Bangalore. And when we had the opportunity to start a school, or we're thinking about starting a school, we asked ourselves a very fundamental existential questions. Why should children go to school? And why should there be yet another school? And in search of some of those answers, okay, we established a foundation of an empathy-based practice in our school, and our children do game-based learning for their learning areas, right? Which also involves a lot of the experiential learning opportunities and a lot of reflection and ownership on abstraction of, okay, how do I really learn to be able to take it to experimentation? But one thing that stood out that has led to the origin of the Changemaker mission, if we provide all this privilege to these students, right? The empathy, the privilege of experiencing game-based learning, and we don't teach them to think beyond themselves, to find some purpose in life, to find meaning in what they do, to contribute to this world, we are doing disservice to this world. And in that process, we figured that the best way to go about it is to take the problems that children experience in interaction with the world, which gets as complex and as gray as it gets, and turn them into projects. Very simple. You can start with one. And I just want to conclude with one simple thing that happened, which led to a career exploration from one of our students. Open this up for questions post that. So one of the missions, so we have 4 Changemaker missions. One of them happens to be around sustainability. The other one is on mission child vulnerability. It deals with all kinds of issues ranging from emotional literacy all the way to abuse and trafficking. We have the third mission, which is around building empowered communities. So our children call it community stories and practices. And we have one on healthy living, each of which happened because our children woke up and said, what is on this label? Why doesn't it match with the picture that they have put on the label, right? So they have a campaign that says and runs, turn the packet around. Turn the packet around and you will see, right? And they're going about educating communities about parents who come and say, oh gosh, I never read the packet. I've never read the label, because the facts stand out. If I read the label, I would know that I was only drinking water and sugar and a lot of chemicals, right? So the mission child vulnerability, when one of our children was exploring, that child is actually right now in the career discovery phase. He felt very deeply connected to how emotions affect learning. And he started following, I don't know how many of you know, Dr. Brené Brown's work and on vulnerability. And he's very inspired to do effective learning as his specialization. And in that course, he's found neuroscience as his calling, as something that he wants to work on. And another child who's actually working on sustainability was very, very inspired by the research that they did, that one of the biggest sources of pollution apart from industries are the vehicles that are transporting all of us, and aviation sector, of course. She was like, I want to transform aviation. I want to work on this sector, and sustainable transport design became an aspirational career choice for her. Another one of them, very core, looking at justice as part of empowering communities, is looking at ethics and is looking to become a purposeful community manager. These are futuristic careers. They don't exist right now, and they're aspiring for it. They are 2030 graduates, okay, so from now. And trust me, whether we want it or not, is already on the path to becoming top number 3 economy by 2030. It's going to happen, okay? The question is, whose hands is this economy in? And if we have anything less than change makers owning this economy, I don't know what world you want to live in. I want to live in a world that is better than today. Don't you? Yes, all right. And experiential learning can enable that discovery of purpose, discovery of meaning, deep learning opportunities, deep engagement. And like Ganesh says, non-bored children. We don't want bored children in our classrooms, all right? This is it. We want to wind up. We have next. We wanted to share with you this list that we had, and we wanted to ask you how many of you are already talking about or already experiencing these, okay? This is not an exhaustive list of experiential learning. You can take a picture. But here is what I wanted to ask you. If you could pick one of these as a counselor, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a head of school that you run at your school or something else, okay? And walk it through that cycle. Walk it through the Kolb's learning cycle. Just put the next slide. Let's walk it through this cycle and find out, where are the gaps? What would you like to do more of? What are you already doing that is great? What one more question that you would like to, one more activity that you would like to do differently? That would be a great learning to have. Would you like to try this activity? Yes. Can we just turn around in 3s and 4s and try this out? You could think through for yourself and turn around and do that activity. And once we can share, and we are open to questions too. All right. What's the time? Okay, all right. So this is a great opportunity for you to think about. The panelists want us to be open for questions. We will take questions. It's okay. Yes, we are open for questions if you have questions. Or do you want to do the activity? Pictures, okay, sorry. I'll move out of the way. So this is World Economic Forum, top 10 skills of 2025. And each of this cannot be done without the rigor of research, design thinking, reflection, critical thinking happening amongst the children. And I think some of the panel discussions that have happened today earlier on that I was attending were talking about how teachers can also be upskilled and upgraded to be able to follow a lot of this. We didn't learn all of this growing up. This was not part of our vocabulary. And there is absolutely no shame in admitting that we don't know this well enough to take it to children. When we can do a great job of it. And that's one of the things I love about IC3, right? There is so much learning, like Ganesh says, gold dust floating around. Let it attach. All right, we are open to questions. Yes. Can you give her a mic? You can tell us who you want to ask, or if it's general, we can take turns. You can come on the floor. Oh, that works? Okay.
I'm Jayashree from AM Jain School in Chennai. I'm the principal. My question is, how do you deal with parental aspirations and how do you involve them? I mean, that part we haven't discussed, because when a child thinks that I want to be this, this, or this, the parent has the plans always. And so how do you bridge this? We cannot totally parental aspirations. And in many cases, that is what plays the dominant role. They are finally the ones who are going to foot the bills. So how do you involve them and how do you guide them here?
It's a good question. Kavita wants to take it. Let's. One of the things that we have now
is we actually have a whole parental part of it, right? So there are two things that we believe are really important for future achievers. It's curiosity and motivation, right? Curiosity is what gets you to those big problems in the first place, which is what we want them to solve. But curiosity is not context free, and what a kid is curious about may be very different to what another kid is curious about. And you try to get them into group projects that they don't care about, and we see what ends up happening. They invariably learning the work and the rest are just sort of sitting around. So we actually have a program where we actually teach parents what is curiosity in the first place. Social curiosity is a type of curiosity that is completely undervalued. What is it? A kid likes gossiping. That's not a bad thing, right? What are they gossiping about is the question. Maybe they're the next big networker. Maybe they're the ones who are going to create the next IC3 conference because they're so good at networking, right? But we dismiss all of these things. So we teach them so we actually engage parents in that, and we get the parents to work with kids on tinkering projects. So the ideas can come from parents' hobbies, and it's a way to also show the parents, how do you kids questions about what are you interested in, what is the kid curious, discover their interests, as well as what to do when the kid gives up. Because a lot of times parents will say, oh, well, my kid did this, but then they moved on to the next thing. And that's because the self-reflection isn't happening, which is what I was pointing out earlier, and everybody else was talking about. And if we're able to do that, then we'll understand why did they give up. Otherwise, the kid gets sort of talked about as if, oh, they're just sort of floating around. We don't know what they're interested in. And those two things are very impactful because all the science shows that curiosity plus motivation outweighs IQ when it comes to academic achievement. And that story is what gets parents interested, because they're all about achievement in the grades.
I think we face it all the time as a university when parents come and say, tell us what is it that the student is going to study, and why are you doing this foundation program and making them run around, going to communities and learning things. Because while it's important to tell them that yes, they will learn a particular subject in depth, it's also important that they learn the ability to apply that learning and apply a larger understanding of problems around them. Because nobody is hiring today because you know a subject. They're hiring you because you can use that subject to find concrete solutions. And nobody finds concrete solutions only on knowledge anymore. Knowledge is available. You not remember what you studied in school, but you can always look it up. Now, what is it that you need is the ability to be able to connect lots of different dots. And I think this conversation with parents is very important. I think one of the big challenges I feel as educators actually exists today is the inability of educators to talk to parents. Okay, and parents are in a different world, and they are, of course, there is an anxiety because there is so much pressure, right? And the pressure is real. Maybe the kids don't realize it, but the pressure is real. You don't get into universities you want your kids to get into, and that's why they're pushing. You have to create that space, and you have to then also help them find organizations and probably organizations like Lumiere or universities that are willing to really engage with such people. Everybody is not cut out only to go to the IIT. Though everybody today, every father, mother, they're like hoping our child will get into JEE and go into IITs. But in reality, in IITs also they're learning problem solving. So I think this conversation is very important.
I had something interesting too. Just two quick things. One, we do like a survey with the parents and ask, before they are objecting to things, we ask them, what are your aspirations, what are your fears, and what are your apprehensions, right? And what we found is stability and significance are the two things that they want, and generally are able to show them a great grid which says stability, significance, and variety contribution, and they get it. So we have to go that extra mile to show them that. By the time they're objecting, we have ignored their fears and apprehensions for a very long time. So I think that helps. We'll take more questions. Thank you. Yeah, reflections, observations. Yes. Do you have a mic for her? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Harshida from Pushkarni School in Expo. Since we're talking about reflections, I think one important reflection, especially as a educator, is I understand when we talk about experiential learning, we're talking about parents or how they're going to be accepting different career choices or research choices. But I think it's equally important for us to understand that as teachers, more than just as principals or heads of schools, we need to make that difference to create that in children. That experiential learning is a very important aspect of learning, because I think a lot of times, like you were mentioning, we kind of are with the pressure of syllabus and academics. The pressure is not just for the child or the parent, but I think it's more a pressure that the teacher builds. Although I'm an educator myself, I understand that, it's, and I think that is disservice, that we're going to be doing, because if we don't put them in that path of this. And I still remember I'm from the IC3 cohort, and one of the first things that Ganesh told us was about this, career choices that children were making, about looking at a packet of Lay's chips and how a teacher can create a difference in the classroom with just a packet of Lay's. To talk about you being a nutritionist, you talking about being, someone into marketing and advertising, you talking about the scientific part of whatever is involved. So there's a world of difference that a teacher can create. So it's just a reflection that I thought. So experiential learning, the golden absolutely come together to make that difference. Otherwise, there's no experience, no learning that eventually. So,
It's so beautiful and it's well said. I talk about this to people. So when I hired people into our school, they were not design thinkers. They were not already people who were doing experiential learning, very passionate, came from different kinds of backgrounds, wanted to educate and work with this vision, right? And one thing which we do is we don't try to change everything at one time. We take small steps and then we learn from it and we do one more thing. We take one small step, we learn from it and we do one more thing. This year, we executed something called Child in the City as a project. And before children went anywhere, the teachers did that work. Same work, walked the same paths, and came back with a lot of observations like children. And that then enabled them to do that for the children. Right? So generally, we are so stuck up on, oh, we have to teach them. We are forgetting about our own experience. And our experience matters a lot. So thanks. Well said, actually. Yeah. All right, we'll take any observations. Yes, please. Can the mic? You can stand. Hi, Sharda. No. Closer, just try
Yeah.
closer.
Hi, I'm Sharda. I'm an educator, teacher from Mindz School, Hyderabad. Can you give us more examples as to how can we take experiential learning to the classroom? That can definitely, because we have some of our completion of syllabus and then exams, especially for the board. You give us some more examples on that?
Several examples. I'll give you two that come to my mind. One is about, how we tell children to wash their hands and they don't. Right. So recently we made a very interesting shift. We took the science lab into the science class, as in we literally shifted the science lab into the science class, because we were like, experiments are not for figuring out what somebody's already done. It's for figuring out what I want to learn through experimentation. Right. And it really worked, because when we were talking to children about hygiene, they wanted to know where are the germs, because we can't see them. My hand is clean. Right. And putting it under a microscope, they started looking for things. It started changing how they're viewing the world, right? Because suddenly a different eyes to it. There a discussion on microorganisms and health and hygiene. Everything opened. An entire module happened on bio and chemistry put together, right? So this is possible if you enable it to happen. In the Child in the City project, children went out with air quality meters, water testing kit, as well as soil testing kits. They brought back things and they made hypothesis on, how do we measure and test all of this? Everything from biochemistry and physics opened up at the same time. And the facilitators just went back and pulled the material from different places to be able to enable that. Does that help you? Does that make sense?
I think this air quality one that she spoke about, where biology, chemistry, and physics you learn together, is a very important example. A lot of times there is this feeling in kids, these independent things. mathematics is different, statistics is different. How do you do research without stats? Right. So I think when you take projects, use the project to its fullest. Ask them to do statistics also. Ask them to do, and then open the maths book with what kind of a graph will you actually use. Don't just leave it at, okay, this is a science experiment. Okay, talk about the physics, talk about the chemistry. So pick things that are complex enough. Like, another interesting thing would be in the kitchen, you use a lot of different things, right? So are there chemicals that you're using? Are they chemicals? Right? They're actually chemicals. So then you figure out what chemicals are they.
Yes, there's a mic there. Two mics.
Hi, I'm Stephen. Oh yes, thank you. I'm Stephen. I'm one of the co-founders of Lumiere. My question is to Kushi. Is it true that today is your birthday? Is that a yes? So I think maybe can we sing happy birthday together for her? We also have a cake. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. It's Kushi. Happy birthday, dear Kushi. Happy birthday to you. Yeah. And thank you to our volunteers. We have plates and some forks and some music.
Because we would have had standing queue out of this place.
Yes, if you guys would like some, we have some cake up there. But happy birthday, Kushi. Yeah. Aw.
I know.
Yes, this is what experiential learning looks like.
Do we have somebody online? No, okay. Yes, ma'am, you had a question.
Yeah, I am Soma from Nagpur, from Center Point School, Katol Road. I am a science teacher and I teach biology and chemistry. And I have been teaching biology and chemistry since last 28 years. So we have integrated physics, biology, and chemistry, all the three subjects always. Especially during the COVID, the projects and the activities that the children were told to do when we were taking classes on GC and Zoom. We had activities like someone said that there are activities that can be done at home, like you said, and the chemicals. So we told them to check on rusting of iron. We told them to check out how a lemon juice reacts with salt and how a baking soda reacts with lemon juice. So these are some of the home activities that they were told to do and to learn chemistry in kitchen and with the household items. So that helped during the COVID times, actually, when we were not able to use the chemistry lab. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think the COVID as example was so amazing because, when you saw all those people, a lot of people think it was a problem that scientists would solve. But it was a sociological problem. You saw all those people leaving their houses and going, from urban areas back to villages. So, when you use such complex material to, differentiate the subjects from it and say, okay, what kind of a problem is this? That gives the student an opportunity to also connect these dots. And it's just connected, there's no difference in the way these things happen. These are all connected things. And I think you'd be very surprised. Why did we know as soon as COVID hit, within a few days, why did we know that we had to keep 6 feet away? Why 6 feet? Where did it come from? Did it come from scientists? Actually, it came from a historian. It came from a historian because there was a historian who had studied the history of the pandemic 100 years back. And he had actually written that time they did experiments which told them that 6 feet is the maximum distance the droplets can go. So a historian actually had knowledge Okay, that scientists at this point of time they didn't have time to do those experiments to see. But later on, you would have heard that a lot of people did experiments where they said, okay, now I know that so they actually threw droplets into the air to would go. But the historian had already solved it, and that's why we knew. So it's a very interesting understanding of a phenomena, looking at it from different angles.
Actually, COVID is interesting. So at that time, we used the data that we had to put it into a scatter plot, and we were doing regression curves with children, math, and the children had done one for India, and US was ahead of us at that time. So they used that and extended and extrapolated our curve, and they predicted January 30th, 2021 is when we will be back in school. As the possibility of a reopening. We were back in school on January 28th. Right? It was amazing. And that kind of learning stays with them. Right? All right. Yes, Minesh has something.
The time is up. Hi, I work with Sparkling Minds. I think I'll just add a few pieces, because as regular teachers, there is a lot to cover, and there is a template that people follow. And the moment experiential learning comes in between, then this becomes another thing that we have to keep in mind. And then if we don't account for it, what will happen is this will also become template. And that it will not do the job it is supposed to do, because wisdom is built through learning, and deep learning happens through deep experiences. And deep experience happens when children and the facilitator or the educator is engaged, immersed in that whole experience. If it is just a tick mark thing, it will take away from the whole thing. So I have more, but I think I should conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're out of time, but we are here for a few more minutes. If somebody wants to talk or share something, would love to hear from you. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye.